Welcome to the show, everybody. And if you could, real quick, just make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or you can also follow on Spotify or wherever you're listening. And if you have a quick second, you can write me a review on Apple Podcasts. That would help me out quite a bit. Or follow me on social media to make sure that you don't miss any future episodes. Now, my guest today, Joel Hoekstra. What a resume this guy has. Night Ranger, Whitesnake, Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He played with Cher. So the list of people he's jammed with or recorded a song with is even longer. And I'm always fascinated by people who can consistently find work in such a competitive field such as music and such high levels of work that he's getting. These aren't cover bands or local gigs. I mean, these are national headlining tours. So we'll get some of Joel's insights into this, and he's also got some great stories on this episode. So here we go. Enjoy it. Please welcome Joel Hoekstra to the Chuck Shoot Podcast. How you doing, Joel?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, so how's it? So you're in the Trans-Siberian Orchestra right now?
Yeah, I roughly, I guess maybe a third of the way through the tour, something like that. Yeah.
And how's it going? Because, you know, some people are still scared to go to shows. So does that affect the attendance at all, or?
You know what it seems like, we've entered a new era where people want to buy day of show because they're sick of buying so far in advance and dealing with refunds and things like that. So the crowds have been, really, really huge, full. And you know, we're just, amazed. It's great. So having a terrific time.
That's good. Oh, that's interesting to know. I think I'm kind of the same way though, because there have been those shows where you buy it in advance and then it's like you got to deal with a refund, and then but sometimes so is there a limit to when you would cancel it? Because if it's people are buying day of, then you don't want to cancel day of, right?
You know, I have no idea. I don't know how any of it works. I just play the songs, but I think that I think that most bands have experienced like advanced sales have been down, and I know Broadway has been that way as well. And people buy day of show, and then the houses are full. So.
I didn't think of that because New York then they're pretty strict with are they doing like half capacity, or is that still a thing at some places?
No, I think it's full capacity on Broadway, but I think audiences are required to be masked, and I don't know if it's
vaccine cards probably too, right?
Vaccine cards or negative test, I think is the policy.
Do you guys have any of those rules at your shows, or?
So that's the way that works. Is it's not up to the artist; it's up to the
venue,
states and venues. Yeah. So we're just whatever the local laws are. We just are rolling with that.
Okay, and then I mean, you're still in Whitesnake too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys gonna have a new album out at some point?
So the big plans there are really starting David's farewell tour. So that's right now we've got stuff lined up in 2022. We start in the UK with Foreigner, a run with them, and then touring Europe, ironically with Europe for the most part, although there are some other dates. I think, we've got maybe a date with Steel Panther and a date with the Dead Daisies, and I think maybe one with Kiss.
Wow, those all sound like great shows. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it for sure.
And then there would be a U.S. tour at some point too then, right?
One would assume a farewell tour would include the U.S., but nothing has been announced yet, so people just kind of wait on that.
Okay, wow. Well, your career is so amazing, but if we could just take a step back and kind of figure out how you got here. It's kind of amazing that you started and you were doing all these. Tell me about, or tell my audience about, all these guitar lessons that you were doing when you're in your 20s and you're playing gigs. And I heard you say 70 students a week. So I was trying to do the math, and I'm like, that's either 10 students a day, 7 days a week, or was it 5 days a week, 14 students a day? Either way, that's a lot of students.
I think back then it was 6 days a week, and they were 30-minute lessons. So nothing that crazy. I mean, it was like, a normal work week for most people. Putting in 35 hours, it just sounds like a lot, I guess, in terms of number of students a week. But yeah, so that was a lot of my 20s was spent doing that, and then gigging around the Chicago area with the bands that I was in. And yeah, my story is like a long one. It's very hard to tell like very briefly like how it all happened, but I went to New York to do a show called Love Janis. That was about Janis Joplin.
Right.
That was the move there, and that was really the first time where I wasn't teaching and gigging, where I just began to perform, and so that really that led to about a 20-year run of that, of like only performing. So.
Oh, you did
Uh,
that for 20 years?
no. Love
Oh.
Janice was like a 2-year run, but
Oh.
in terms of like transitioning from
Oh,
teaching
I
and
see what you're saying. Yeah.
performing there to only performing, yeah.
Okay, that made more sense. Yeah, because so then it was this, but it was this guitarist from Survivor, Jim. What is it, Jim Peterick?
Jim Peterick. So
Peterick.
that one of the things I did in the Chicago area was play in his house band for his world stage events, and so he would have a lot of his friends come out and sing their hits and maybe a new song of theirs or whatever. So I got to play with a lot of fun people with that. Rick Emmett from Triumph and Don Barnes from 38 Special and Kip Winger. It's a real Alan Parsons, like a really long, cool list of people that would come out and be a part of those. And one person that was a part of it almost every year was Kelly Kagi from Night Ranger, the drummer. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what kind of led to me joining Night Ranger, was knowing Kelly from there. And when there was an availability, they gave me an opportunity. My audition was basically a gig. And so that's what led to Night Ranger. And really through doing pit gigs in New York, that led to doing the Broadway show Rock of Ages. And that kind of matched up nicely with Night Ranger because I could take off on Broadway when I needed to. And then really through a TV appearance on that and having friends in the band, that led to an audition for TSO. And so then I added that in, and I kind of had all three things going on, which was nuts. Then basically transitioned over to Whitesnake, and Rock of Ages eventually closed. And so it was Whitesnake and TSO. And then David took some time off to have knee surgery one year, and ended up kind of I filled in for what was supposed to be a very short amount of time in Cher's band, and then ended up doing a longer run with that than I ever thought to, a few years. So it was kind of Whitesnake and TSO and Cher there for a few years as well. So
Dang.
it's a long story. It's hard to
Well,
tell.
yeah, but so how, I mean, you paid your dues though to get to that first. Either I don't know if would you call Love Janis your first big break, or Night Ranger? I mean, either one. It took a long time to get to both of those, right? Like how many
Yeah, I mean,
years
there's
of?
even stuff before that, because joining Kathy Richardson's band in local gigs in Chicago, she was doing really well there, and Kathy is really who got the role as Janis Joplin, and so kind of my introduction to being able to do that as well. So yeah, it's just like my career has just been a case of just kind of climbing step by step. I just tell people like, in the end, I worked really hard at every step, and you could almost trace back every gig I've ever gotten to some moment of like, but you put in all that work for like no money, and like and so
Hmm.
you just gotta kind of do the things that other people wouldn't do and outwork everybody, and that's
Yeah.
what I tell
Explain that. Give me an example. What is a gig where you worked really hard and you got like no money for it? And why did you just do it because you love the music so much, or?
So like, the Rock of Ages gig, I was subbing for my friend on pit gigs on Broadway. So I'd have to learn, 350 pages of music or whatever, I mean, you'd have to work, I would work 6 hours a day for weeks just to get a shot to like maybe once in a while go in, and I don't know what, typical pit gig is like $200 or something like that when you go play it. So it'd be like,
Oh.
if you broke down the work and the money
Mhm.
made, you'd go, wow, dude, you're making like 7 cents an hour or something crazy, and the Jim Peterick thing was like that too, because I was at a point I had already gone to New York to do Love Janis, and I was still flying in day of show to do those world stage gigs. So I would get down 35 songs by memory. So it would take weeks of like daily preparation while I was playing like 8 shows a week with Love Janis every night, and go in and play the one show with Jim, which, not that Jim paid poorly by the show, but it was all that, lead all that work you have to do, the prep work, and those by the end too. I'm sure it was like, dude, I was making like under $1 an hour or something like that for the work you put in to go do it. But that led to Night Ranger. So
Did you
The
know
story
that?
like
Was that your plan, and that you'd have this end goal of like joining bigger bands, and you were doing steps, or you just like, I really want to get this gig and I really want to play with a bigger audience?
No, not at all. I think it was just, enjoying what I do and working hard at it and wanting to be better at it. And, like the pit gig thing for me was a great excuse to, to work on my sight reading again and work
Mm.
on reading music, which you don't run across a lot in bands. It's not like David Coverdale and Whitesnake's going to like throw sheet music down in front of you and go play
Hmm.
this song. I mean, it's obviously the rock and roll school of by ear. So, it's things like that. And, in the Jim Peter gig, I would say that was out of the opportunity to get to play with all those people and all those guys in the band back there. They're all my friends and great musicians. And, the whole thing's been a labor of love. It's like I've always just kind of looked at the music business as some things pay great and other things have not, but it's more about like whether or not you love doing what you do and trying to be like really good at it by putting in a lot of work at it.
Yeah. So with the Night Ranger, did you have to audition for that? And do you know how many people you must have beat out? Some people. There must have been some other people considered that you beat out, right?
Well, like I said, that was kind of like just a gig. So the way that worked was that they had parted ways with Jeff Watson, and Reb Beach, ironically, was playing with them for the time being, but they knew he was going to be going back to Whitesnake. So they needed somebody. And it happened that one show that they had booked, Reb had to play with Winger. And so Night Ranger was either just going to cancel this show. And Kelly said, I know this guy who plays with Jim Peterick,
Okay.
who he'll learn like 35 songs and on no rehearsal fly in and play the show down. And like, so that's an example of how you build that reputation. So that really was my pathway in. And then I basically did that with Night Ranger. I think I had like a week or two to get it together. So I remember practicing like extremely hard for a week or two. And then I say, that first show with them, I mean, we had a very short sound check and it was like jumping out of a plane, not knowing if your parachute was going to work. And then when it opened, it was awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, because I would think I've heard so many stories like that where people get the gig and they have even less time than what you're saying. I've heard like you have like a day to learn all these songs, or I think was it who's the other guitarist that I had on from Night Ranger, and now I'm blanking on his name. Kerry Kelly. I think he said he had like a day or something. I thought it was him or somebody. And so it's like, I guess a week doesn't sound so bad.
I had that with Foreigner. So when I filled in for Mick Jones in Foreigner, I had one day, and that was my experience with that total panic.
And you did it though.
A total panic moment of like because we were out on tour together. It was Night Ranger Foreigner journey, and Mick was under the weather, and so basically I had a day to get it together, and that was high stress, but great reward in the end.
So what happens like when you're playing with Foreigner or Whitesnake or Cher and these big major stars, and you screw up and you make a mistake? Do you try to come up to them afterwards and apologize, or do you just like not say anything and hope they don't notice? Like, how do you deal with that? Because there must be times where you hit the wrong note or screw up a little bit, right?
Case by case basis, I guess, is my best answer for that. I don't know. Read the room. If it gets mentioned, then you can say, yeah, why that happened is this, or, sometimes the best response is, I suck. That's my.
No, have you had that where you've just sucked? You've never had those moments, have you?
I mean, I'm my own worst critic for sure. So usually most people are more satisfied with, the job you do than I am. I'll always be like, man, I could have done better. I could have played better. So
really, that's interesting because you've played with so many A-list bands and musicians that you'd be critical of yourself. Like, I thought you'd have a higher ego.
I think all musicians are critical. That's how you get better, because you want to improve. If you don't critique yourself, usually you don't improve very much. So, I mean, most musicians I know are pretty critical of their own performance, like a little harder on themselves, have a harder time listening to themselves or watching video of themselves and things like that. I think that's pretty common. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's always a compromise. in terms of how accurate you can play when you're on stage. There's distractions, there's, entertaining people. And certainly if you put a guitar in somebody's hands and you're sitting down and you're running a set, it's a little easier to play it perfectly than when you're on stage and you're moving around, and your in-ear mix might be, I don't know, different at times than you expected, or I don't know, there can be distractions. I always tell people, like, you need to know music to the point where you can like carry on a conversation with somebody while you're playing it. That's like the level you should know it at, or like deal with somebody like yelling in your ear and you can still play without messing up. That's kind of the way a gig can feel sometimes.
That's an interesting take. I guess I just never thought of that, because you see these, or you hear these stories, or you see it where bands are just hammered and they're drunk or they're on drugs or whatever, and they're still playing. I guess probably the playing definitely suffers with those things, but there's so many, stories of that where the bands are just, and it's like, how do they do, or does the drugs help them? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been one of those guys, but I mean, some of it might come down to what band you're in, how difficult the material is to play.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Night Ranger had some pretty, shredding solos from Jeff Watson that I had to cover. And, Whitesnake, definitely. There's lots of guitar work in Whitesnake, and Trans-Siberian Orchestra is a lot of, playing very, very accurately. And while while you're on a lift 20 feet in the air, swaying around in fog and lasers and, so
that's a really good point. I never thought of all the distractions, because you're right. You're not just playing the guitar. You're having to deal with all these, the crowd, the lasers, the fog. I mean, that's a really good point. I never thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously a great thing, and it's an amazing thing, but it can, the entertainment, there's always a little bit of a compromise on how accurate you play, but nobody wants to see like 10 people sit up there on folding chairs playing their parts, like totally sitting still staring at their instruments, right?
No, that's exactly right. So tell me about Joel Hoekstra's 13. I think it's interesting that you just went all in on 13, because there's all these hotels and things that don't have a 13th floor because it's unlucky, and you said, screw it, I'm taking that as a name.
Yeah. Well, so the way I viewed that when I was starting it, I had solo albums out under the name Joel Hoekstra, right? That were sound like guitar albums. They're instrumental, and some of them were kind of like fusion-y and a little bit more progressive. And then I was like joining the bands. Everybody's like, you should really put on a solo album that sounds more like the bands that you're in, as I was getting these gigs. So, which I did want to do, and I thought was a great idea. So the concept was to put out albums that sound like a band, but have the opportunity to do all the writing. So be the person that writes the lyrics and the vocal melodies and everything. So it's not really fair to everybody that's a part of the Joel Hoekstra's 13 CDs to call it a band, because I really want it to be my thing. But also, they don't sound like guitar albums. They sound like a band, like when you put them on. So a project name was the thought, and I thought Joel Hoekstra's 13, sort of indicates, hey, this is a project. And so that's the deal there. There's a little bit of confusion there. Some people don't understand the difference between the Joel Hoekstra albums, the instrumental albums, and the Joel Hoekstra's 13, but that's the deal.
Well, now, does your solo Joel Hoekstra, does that have vocals though? Because I think this one has vocals. That's got to be a big difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah, basically, like I just explained, the Joel Hoekstra albums are like the instrumental.
The instrumental, yeah. But you do sing. I like what you said. You said for the 13 that you'd rather have a better singer and have the album sound better than have you sing it and have it just be okay. That's kind of like interesting take though, because you kind of have to like, it's like an ego check there.
Well, yeah, I just want to put out a great album that's more about like the songs and, Russell Allen. I mean, hard to do better than that. And Jeff Scott Soto sang half of the lead vocals on the first record too. So, two amazing singers. They definitely sing way better than I do. So that's a great, in my view, that's a smart thing to do. If it gives me the opportunity to still write everything and write the melodies, then, that's, for me, it's more about like the songs and having the opportunity to be the person who's calling the shots on it. And, I mean, those albums definitely still very much feel like my babies, like I'm the one who's going to I guess, have the final say so in the mix and things like that. And so,
Yeah, no, they sound great. And I think what I really like about them is just how melodic the music is. Like it sounds good. Like, I don't know how else to say that, but to me, it like sounds good. You know what I mean? Like it's a melody. You can sing along to it, and they're catchy. They're catchy songs.
thanks. Well, I mean, I try and build chorus out. I'm kind of, I guess that's like the poppier sensibility in me is
Mm-hmm.
my songs usually start with a chorus more than some people start with a riff. Like, hey, I've got this great guitar
Oh.
riff. What can we do with it? And a lot of times with me, it starts more with like a chorus that I'll write. That's a good chorus. I should try and build that out, and then build the riffs out and build a verse and a pre-chorus and things like that.
So when you write a chorus, are you like that's actually writing music, or it's just like a melody in your head, or?
Yeah, a lot of times it'll be the guitar and me singing along, which
Mm.
I have a tendency to do. So if I'm riffing, I usually am trying to sing a melody of what would be there. Um, and then sometimes, yeah, it'll be just me walking around and I'll sing a melody. I'll have a chorus in my head. Like that was the case with Hard to Say Goodbye off of the latest one, Running Games. I was in Tokyo and with Whitesnake and walking around, and that chorus came to mind, and I had it in my head, and before I had the guitar, and then went and picked up the guitar and figured out, okay, so that's what I'm hearing. So sometimes it's that, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, because you not only, I mean, you can sing a little bit and you play guitar, obviously, but you also have background in cello and piano, I think, right?
Just as a kid, yeah. I mean, I was like, my parents are classical musicians, so I think they had grand designs on maybe parenting like a child virtuoso. So they had me on cello at a very young age and piano, and I was just very, very young and
Did
just
you
wanted
like
to.
that though? Because my parents made me take piano and I hated it.
No, I hated it.
Okay.
I just wanted to play baseball for sure. I was like a little sports kid, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I saw AC/DC, and I was like, whoa, that dude is the coolest dude in the world, like Angus Young. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what made me want to get a guitar. And so I went to my parents and asked for a guitar, and I think they probably thought, sure, you're Segovia classical guitar, right? Sure. And then next thing they knew, I was playing like Paranoid and stuff like that and rocking out. So
Did they try to like still try to sway you into the more classical, or did they just finally accept it? Okay, he wants to play rock and.
no, I kind of did that on my own as I got older and wanted to take classical. There was that was a great era for that because a lot of the rock players were bringing in those elements. Randy Rhoads
Mm-hmm.
and of course Yngwie Malmsteen, and bringing sort of popularizing those classical themes in the rock music and in the rock guitar. So I wanted to take classical lessons, and I did. I think my last year or two of high school, and then actually a couple of years of college, where I actually was playing more classical guitar than electric guitar. So I definitely spent a lot of time doing that as well, which was it's in the end it's all good. I always tell people keep an open mind and just work hard at it, whatever it is you're doing, and then life will kind of guide you where you're meant to be. And despite the fact I've been through playing with so many different types of bands and so many different types of styles and sessions and all that stuff, the stuff that's really clicked for me is the stuff that made me want to get into playing guitar in the first place, which is playing with like, Whitesnake. And that's like, amazing how life will sometimes just bring you where you're meant to be.
Absolutely. Well, so you mentioned school. I think you went to, is it it's GIT, Guitar Institute Technology, something like that.
Yeah, I did a couple years of college where I got my associate's degree, and then I really had just wanted to go to GIT, but I was super young, like when I
Mm.
got out of high school, I was 17, and I think my parents were a little bit like, don't know about sending you off to Hollywood when you're 17 to go like live in an apartment, and but by 19, I guess it was deemed acceptable.
Hmm. So do you have to apply to get into that? Like you have to send them audition tape or anything, or how's that work?
Yeah, I think GIT is, they're pretty, at least back in that day, they were accepting of most levels as long as you knew how to play guitar. I think they weren't looking for people to like have to learn how to play a G chord, they wanted people that could play guitar a bit. So yeah, there was some application process, but I think I was qualified by that point for sure.
I think I can't remember who it was. It might have been Sam Bam Colton, who was saying, I thought he went there, but somebody was saying that they felt like the best part of that was networking and meeting people. Do you agree? Was that the best experience for you there? Was it being able to meet other guitar players and network, or do you feel like you learned a lot from the classes?
Well, it's a combination of both of those things. And I would say also just really good for a kid who grew up in suburban Chicago. Back then, we didn't have the internet to be checking out guitarists around the world. To have this moment of all of a sudden the first day of school sitting in a room with 500 guitar players going like, wow, there's a lot of people that want to do this, and just kind of getting a read on where you stood, and that's easier to do these days. You can go on YouTube and go, wow, this guy's playing like this. Let me see if I can get after that. So it was all good for me. I played an awful lot of guitar. I would say that life experience would be the biggest thing. Just getting out of a small town and going to Hollywood and living there for a couple of years was a great experience.
Did you get to do gigs when you were in Hollywood? Did you get to play any sort of like at the Whiskey or any of these like epic clubs?
Not really. I mean, I practiced really hard and was recording a lot during my year at GIT, and then I practiced really hard and recorded a lot and worked at a studio out there called Cherokee Studios, which is world famous. So it's like 5 studios, and that was fantastic for a life experience too, just watching all these major artists come in and cut albums over that process, and also watching people who were unknown at the time and seeing them a year later be like major superstars on MTV.
Really? Like, what's an example of a band that you came in that you never heard of and then it blew up?
Like Rage Against the Machine was like demoing like their first record there. And I remember, Tom Morello hanging out playing the video game in the lobby every night and talking with people like that. And then like a couple of years later, you're like, wow, that guy's like a superstar now.
That's crazy.
But all kinds of people. There was, in that period, Tori Amos came in and did like a showcase, and she ended up really blowing up. 311, where they were total. I remember they pulled up in their vehicle from Nebraska, like, and parked in the alley and got like a ticket, and it was like that. There was like literally they arrived in like LA, like in
wow.
So yeah, there was a lot of fun stuff like that. And then also, just really big artists that were in there during that time. And that was like right around the time when the gangster rap thing was blowing up, and, Ice-T and Ice Cube coming in there and doing stuff. And Boys to Men was really big, and they were in there at the time. And Madonna and this. I mean, the really long list of people that were in and out of there.
That's cool. And that must be, like you said, that's a huge learning experience to watch from those guys what to do. Or maybe, did you see anything like of mistakes, like what not to do?
Rick James was in there when I worked there, and that was interesting.
So was this during the cocaine years, or?
Oh yeah, right around the era where he and his wife, I think, had that where they burned the prostitute or whatever. I mean, that was like crazy times.
So was he was he yelling at people and stuff, or it was just obvious he was coked up?
Like every single phrase that ever came out of his mouth was like screaming. It could be positive screaming, but it could also be negative screaming.
Oh wow.
Doesn't do it justice,
Okay.
It's a lot of fun to see, and I was, your role when you work at a studio is just to basically not speak. So you're just kind of hanging out and you're just bearing witness to it all. But yeah, there was a lot of great memories. There's a lot of famous records have been cut there, all the way from that early Jackson 5 stuff to all the Rod Stewart stuff, and there were all these legendary stories that circulated throughout the Cherokee faculty,
So does that, when you see like Rick James and he's coked out of his mind, is that as a young kid, that's got to be impressionable? Do you go, okay, remind me to never do cocaine? Because you seem like you never got mixed up in the drugs and stuff. Am I right?
I just basically took it all at face value. I mean, I was really young, 19, 20 years old. I
Yeah.
was just trying to get through my workday there and uh, pray that I could not get fired and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I was super green, dude. I mean, I was not ready for at 19, 20 years old. I didn't really understand. I think I had like a lot of technical ability on guitar at that point, but I didn't really understand what it was to be like a pro and be out gigging and working and touring and what it was going to take to do all those things.
Hmm.
So I'm glad I went back to Chicago in a way because that gave me the opportunity to grow and do that. I guess in an environment that where I could be with my guitar more. The teaching thing, I did really well with that because it allowed me to play my guitar
Hmm.
5, 6 hours a day, as opposed to having a different job where it's like you get home and you're like, yeah, maybe I'll put in like an hour on my guitar or something. So
No, that makes sense. That's really good. So Whitesnake, Night Ranger, Cher, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, so many high profile gigs. Is there anyone that you were considered for or auditioned for that you didn't get?
nothing that I've auditioned for. I mean, there's been, just like a lot of the guitar players in the scene, there's been a couple bands along the way where they've, inquired or talked, but I don't want to name names or anything like that. But there's been a couple times like that that would probably surprise people or be like,
Damn it,
wow.
those are the ones I want. Okay, I'll respect that. Well, tell me some stories though, because like I look at your website and I'm looking at the musicians played with, and this list is like huge, and I'm trying to figure out some of these. Like I don't know when you played with them, so you'll have to tell me the stories. Like Sammy Hagar, when did you play on an album or was it live?
No, that was just recently. And like, so, yeah, I mean, my bio is like, I try to list the people who I've played with the most up at the top. And then there's
Hmm.
all these moments where I just did a gig in Texas where I got to go up and play the finale with Vince Neil and Sammy. And so, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I like to document some of that stuff because for me, it's like, yeah, I didn't really play with Sammy Hagar. I mean, I was up and like jammed a song with Sammy Hagar, but
That
to me, that's
counts.
important because, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the way I look at it, dude. Is I'm like, yeah, it doesn't belong on like a serious bio. Like I would never say put that at the top of my list and say played with Sammy Hagar because that would feel a bit disingenuous. But still, I feel like all the hard work you do in life leads you to those situations, and you're like, hey, I got to hop up and jam with Sammy Hagar on a song. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely count that. I'm definitely that's never going to happen for me. So I totally count that. What about Brett Michaels? Was that the
It's not
same
a
thing?
enthusiasm for all those people. That's the bottom line. And like, so yeah, for me, that's like, that's amazing. Like the 13-year-old me would be like, of course you have to put that on your
Right.
website.
Totally. Yeah. So Brett Michaels, was it a similar thing there? Would you just jam with him or?
Yeah, Brett was just like a song. So I was playing with Dee Snider's solo band. And so Dee Snider played a gig with Tom Kiefer and with Brett Michaels. And then at the end, we all got up and did a song together. So same type of scenario there. He's such a nice guy though. He's, Whitesnake has done some shows. Brett, opened for us at some gig in Canada, I forget where, and he stood side of stage for like half our set and was fist bumping me, and I was like, this guy's just so nice, he's so cool.
Wow.
Just yeah, I had anyway. My experience with him, I was very positive. I just thought he was a really nice guy.
That's really cool. What about Sebastian Bach? Was that a similar thing, just the jam session?
Sebastian so we were in the movie Rock of Ages together.
Right.
Cameo scene. So I shared a trailer with Sebastian and Nuno and Kevin Cronin, basically, and Debbie Gibson had her own trailer, but we were the pack of people in that cameo. So we hung out for a few days in Miami, and then one of the things we did was do a little like impromptu acoustic concert for the actors and catering, and so that's I've technically jammed with Sebastian Bach's story. It's like there's not. Yeah, I mean, most of the people on the list are like that. Ted Nugent, I'm just on like a track on, we covered Coming of Age on a Night Ranger album and segued into Stranglehold in the middle. But
Fun.
the way I look at it is, but I'm on a song with Ted Nugent playing guitar and he played through my, I think was so cool. He recorded his part through my amp. So, yeah, there's lots of little moments like that where I don't necessarily have a tight affiliation with all these people, but I'm still proud of the moment. You get the pick.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. And then, yeah, the last one I was going to ask you about was the Hugh Jackman, because that's got to be one of the musicals, right, that you worked on, or?
Yeah, so that was The Boy from Oz. I was subbing in the pit, and there was a segment of the show where you'd start the second act on stage with him and be like a smaller band, like a five-piece band. And then he would stop the show, and he would always do something improv with the audience. He would get a mic out to somebody in the audience, and they would put a spot on them. And one thing about him, he was amazing. It was my first day on the show, and he came up to me and knew my name, said, "Joel, welcome. It's great to have you here." And he's just such a professional. He knows everybody's name on the entire set.
Wow.
Person. And I was just some guy subbing on guitar. He didn't need to know my name, and he knew my name and welcomed me and said, "Welcome here." And then when he did this improv bit, he wanted this person to sing something and said, "What do you want to sing?" And then they said, "Bon Jovi." And so he looked back at me, and I started Dead or Alive, right? And it was my first day doing this gig. And so anyway, this person sang a little bit of Dead or Alive, and then there was this moment where Hugh said, "I just want to let everybody know," at the end of the bit, he said that this is Joel's first day with us, and he was the guy to come up with the Bon Jovi song. And so he said, "I think that deserves a round of applause." And the like broke out in applause. And so, I mean, what a pro and what a top guy. It was just like a really cool experience. This is before I was in any of the bands or anything.
Yeah.
So
Wow, that's amazing. I hear so many stories like that. Way more stories like that of these big stars that are just so kind and genuine than stories like the Rick James where they're screaming at everybody.
I had a lot of, great moments like that with Rock of Ages, because the people they come to those Broadway shows kind of on like little PR tours in a way, because they do the photo op at intermission, and then it goes out. And so there was a very long list of very like big name celebrities that came to that show. And of course we did things like played on the Tonys. And that was one of my very surreal moments. I remember because our bit was at Radio City Music Hall, right? So I had to start it with a solo, and everybody in the cast came up on an elevator behind me. Right. So I was alone on stage, or like waiting on the side of the stage by myself. And Will Ferrell stands like right here, and Dolly Parton stands right here, and they're like talking to each other. And I've got my guitar like warming up, and I'm just thinking, it's like the coolest moment in the world. Like,
that is awesome.
I wanted a picture of that so desperately. I'm like, I just didn't want to say anything to either one of them, but I was like, I'm listening to Will Ferrell and Dolly Parton have this like awesome conversation. I was like, this is so surreal. It was really neat for just, some guitar player from suburban Chicago to have those moments. I mean, I think that's pretty cool.
It's crazy to think of. Yeah, you started like just this climb, and it just kept going, and you built a reputation for yourself, and it just kept leading to all these opportunities.
Yeah, there's lots of fun stories. I definitely feel blessed to have had the opportunities I've had. I mean, there's a lot of great players out there. I think in the end, it's finding the right balance between working really hard at your playing and then working your best with getting along with people, and not overdoing the networking thing, but doing the networking thing.
Okay.
There's a point where you can overdo that stuff too, I think.
Oh, because is it like if you're asking people for stuff, or how do you overdo it?
Yeah, because I think if on the scene, I think people think of you if you're on the scene, rather than always saying, "Hey, dude, think." Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I think it can be overdone too. So finding the balance there somehow, and then I think just having respect for the situations that you're in. A lot of times people you can get inside certain things, you get on tour and you lose perspective, and just, for me, it's just always important to remember, like, the big picture, how glad I am to be in the, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and how glad I am to be a part of Whitesnake right now. It's something like periodically I just still tell David, just because it's like, people always tell each other that when you've played like the biggest gig of your, you get done with the biggest gig and dude, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I just once in a while I like to remind David like, hey, by the way, dude, just want to let you know, I'm like so happy to be in this band and like so glad to be here, So I think things like that are important just to like, remind yourself, keep perspective, but also just to like let others know that you appreciate it and you appreciate the opportunities and, not get cocky. Cause I mean, dude, there's so many great guitar players out there in the world, I mean, it's not like, everybody needs to remember they're replaceable, there's
Absolutely. Yeah.
no like I'm irreplaceable swirling around in my head ever.
No, it's competitive. Is now all these great gigs that you've had, is there any that you haven't had that you want, like someone that you'd want to jam with that you, even if it's just for one song?
I tried to do some of that stuff during COVID with some of these quarantine jams because they weren't necessarily for money and they were just low key and everybody was kind of doing that remote stuff. So I checked some names off the list, doing the Abracadabra video with Arnel Pineda. Arnel's somebody I've been friends with since 2008 when Night Ranger toured with Journey and just always admired his singing and he's such a positive guy. I love the people with the positive personalities like that, and Billy Sheehan. I'd never worked with Billy Sheehan at all. So having him in that video gave me an opportunity to at least say like, hey, I've done something with Billy Sheehan now. A couple of videos of Mike Portnoy in that time. Mike and I, even though we've both been in like 10,000 bands, had never done anything together. So, just people where I admire their talent and their playing and a lot of times the personality. I did the Echo Bats video with Tony Harnell. He's somebody I've never done anything with. And Nico McBrain on Jen Majura's so that all that was done during COVID. So, but in general, no. My whole thing is more of that philosophy of like always just work hard and let life guide you to where you're supposed to be because some of the stuff you'll never see coming. I say it in all my interviews, but I was not the 11-year-old kid playing the Black Sabbath and AC/DC riffs going like someday I'm going to be on Broadway, but it really changed my life. And the same goes for the Cher gig. Like I wasn't sitting there going someday I'm going to play with Cher. But like, both of those turned out to be like these huge blessings in my life and opportunities. So sometimes you got to just like work hard at whatever avenues are available to you and see where it all takes you.
That's great advice. I love it. Tell me about you have a project with Michael Sweet it's not out yet, right?
Yeah, it's not out yet. So Michael Sweet and Nathan James and my Whitesnake bandmate, Tommy Aldridge on drums and Marco Mendoza on bass. So
wow. What can you tell? Is there a name for the project or a song title or anything? Is it all secret?
Nothing's been announced. I mean, that's all got to come from Frontiers,
Oh, okay.
But yeah, looking forward to it. It's all mixed and mastered, and I don't know the release date or anything for you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But yeah, I know. I think we're looking to do some promo for that, and get it out there as soon as possible. But I don't have a release date. Sorry.
Okay. Anything else that you're working on that you want to promote here?
Man, I mean, you did your homework and you covered it. I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm like just trying to get through the Trans-Siberian Orchestra tour. Very much looking forward to the Whitesnake farewell tour. I mean, I think that's going to be magical to have an opportunity to be a part of the band. David's last big crowd, and that's a kind of pretty cool opportunity for any guitarist, I feel like. So, looking forward to that. Looking forward to that project coming out and doing some writing for another Joel Hoekstra's 13 album, and just try to stay busy on a daily basis and keep working at what it is that I do and hope for the best, dude.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah, Whitesnake. I hope you guys do a U.S. show. Now, were you there? You must have been there when they had, because we have a band in Arizona called the Black Moods, and they opened for Whitesnake on a short tour. Do you remember them?
Oh, of course. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They were great to tour with. Great guys, great band.
Yeah, really fun. So maybe they can hop on for the Phoenix show. That'd be cool. But All right. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I like to end each episode with is there a charity or a nonprofit that you want to promote here that's something that's near and dear to your heart?
Oh my gosh, you're gonna totally call me out here.
No, I mean, there's so many, but is this just something that you worked with in the past? Or, I mean, I always just put something, if after they've bought in the Joel Hoekstra's 13 anthology, they can throw a few bucks to some charity or something.
Salvation Army. That's my little donation. In the city where I live, anything that is not fitting into my life anymore goes there. So that's my answer for you. That's the one I give to.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I know you're a busy guy, so I'll let you get back to it. Thanks for all the entertainment over the years too.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for taking me out. Yeah. Enjoy the warm weather there in Phoenix.
I will. Yes.
Are you guys like 90 today or something?
Probably.
Yeah. Awesome, all right. Dude. Right on. Well,
see you later.
To make it soon. Hopefully we can connect in person.
Yeah. That sounds fun. I'm down for that.
All right. Right on, brother.
All right. See you later.
Thanks a lot, man.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Joel Hoekstra, guitarist for Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Whitesnake, and Joel Hoekstra's 13. I'm curious if that Whitesnake farewell tour sticks, because we know some of these farewell tours end up never ending, like Kiss, or the band reunites, like with Motley Crue. So I don't know if I want to chance it, though. So I think either way, I'd love to see Whitesnake live. I've never seen them, so that'd be fun. Make sure to follow Joel and all his bands on social media, and you can keep up with news and show announcements that way. If you enjoyed this interview, check out some of the other interviews I've done. Many members of 80s rock bands, as well as other music ones, movies and TV people. I have sports interviews, all sorts of great stuff. So if you subscribe to the show or follow me on social media, you'll keep up with future episodes. And I think YouTube is really where it's going to be at for me. If you have to pick one way to follow me, I think subscribe to the YouTube channel, because there's going to be some exciting stuff coming on there. I'm going to be making some upgrades, and I think YouTube is going to be the future for me. I'm really going to go all in on that. So thank you for your support. I appreciate you all. Have a great rest of your day, and remember to shoot for the moon.